Hey everyone, you're in the War Summary channel. In this video, we're going to talk the most important events that took place during the last 24 hours. In this ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, significant military operations are taking place across different fronts. The situation remains dynamic, with both sides constantly engaging in offensive and defensive actions. Let's explore some key developments and updates in the current military landscape. Firstly, we begin with the Crimea region and its impact on South Ukraine. The Russians have successfully restored traffic on the vital bridge connecting Crimea to the mainland. Now they can use this route to transport supplies and light vehicles, easing pressure on the main supply and support road in South Crimea. This move significantly minimizes Ukrainian possibilities to counterattack Russian positions. On the other side, during the previous night, Ukrainian troops launched a massive drone attack on Crimea, which turned out to be the most substantial assault since the beginning of the special military operation. They deployed up to 28 drones in this attack. The Russian defense was prepared for this drone attack. Out of the 28 drones, 17 were successfully suppressed by the Russian electronic warfare, rendering them inoperative and landing them on the ground. Furthermore, the remaining 11 drones were destroyed by the same type of weapon, displaying the effectiveness of the Russian air defense. Now, shifting our attention to the Odessa region, we witness continued or renewed Russian bombings and shelling in Crimean port settlements like Mykolaiv and Odessa. This escalation comes after the collapse of the grain deal between Russia and Ukraine, and as a result, the Russians have targeted these two towns. Mykolaiv and Odessa hold important ports that Ukraine uses for trade, supporting, and supplying their products to the world. In these attacks, the Russian forces have largely utilized Iranian drones and missiles. These advanced unmanned aerial vehicles and missiles allow precision targeting, causing explosions and disruptions in this region. Beyond trade and supplies, it's crucial to remember the humanitarian effects of these attacks on civilian populations caught in the crossfire. In the Donetsk area, near Marinka, there was this huge counteroffensive operation launched by the Russians. It had been going on for a few days now. Interestingly, the Russians chose to change their tactics and attack slightly south of Krasnohorivka and north of Marinka. Surprisingly, their plan worked out, and they were able to regain control of the trenches and Ukrainian fortifications in that area. Right now, the Ukrainian forces are launching a counterattack in this area, trying to regain control of the stronghold. It's a crucial location because if the Ukrainians fail to secure it, the Russians will have a great opportunity to start further offensive operations to the south of Krasnohorivka. However, if the Ukrainians manage to hold on to this strategic position, they may launch a counteroffensive on Krasnohorivka from the south and east. On the other hand, if the Russians win the Battle of Novelsky, they will have the advantage to attack the Ukrainians from the north as well. The Russians are constantly bombing and shelling Ukrainian positions on the tactical bridgehead in the Donetsk area. It seems like the primary objective is to suppress and destroy the Ukrainian artillery systems, which have been aiding the Ukrainians in their fight against the Russians in that area. According to Russian sources, they claim to have successfully destroyed several of these artillery systems, as shown in different videos. These videos are geolocated, providing evidence of the attacks. It seems like it was a fortunate day for the Russians as they continue to target and destroy positions along the front line. I received some really distressing updates from Klishchiivka. The Russians have reported that the Ukrainians have been extensively using cluster bombs. In fact, the usage of cluster bombs has increased tenfold compared to before. It's certainly terrible news on one hand, but on the other hand, it suggests that the Ukrainians might be lacking conventional artillery shells that are usually used to target strongholds and trenches. At the moment, it seems like their primary option is using artillery shells that are mainly used to inflict casualties and reduce manpower. Now let's shift our attention to the Kupiansk front line, where we received some fascinating updates. According to Ukrainian sources, which have been confirmed by Russia, the Russians have launched a major offensive operation in the region between Syrskyi and Syrskyi. It appears that there are various fronts involved, with at least 5 different directions of attack. The first direction of the Russian attack is toward Syrskyi. According to sources, the Russians have made some progress in this area over the past few days as a result of their attack. Currently, their objective is to further consolidate their position and expand their control in the Syrskyi region. Moving on to the second direction of attack, the Russians are moving from the direction of Kuzymivka and Novoselivska. Today, for the second time, Russian sources reported that they successfully captured Novosibirsk after intense fighting. As a result, they managed to force the Ukrainian troops to retreat from the settlement towards Stelmakivka and Berestov, the third direction of the attack, which is in the area of Karmazyanivka. The Russians have successfully crossed the Zherebets River while setting up a bridgehead on the Ukrainian side. In response, the Ukrainians have made multiple attempts in the past day to launch counterattacks and push the Russians back from their bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the river. Today, the Russians posted yet another video showcasing an attempted Ukrainian assault on Russian strongholds in the forest. Unfortunately for the Ukrainians, their attack was met with strong resistance from the Russian forces, who utilized artillery systems and various other weapons. As a result, the Ukrainian forces were compelled to retreat and were unable to make major progress in their assault. Indeed, this operation holds significant importance for the Ukrainians, as they were caught off guard by the Russian offensive in this specific area. The bridgehead near Karmazyanivka is of particular concern because it had the lowest level of fortifications from the Ukrainian side. The Ukrainians did not expect the Russians to try to establish a bridgehead on their side of the river without the use of bridges or pontoon bridges. This unexpected strategy has posed a challenge for the Ukrainian forces in defending this area. To counter the Russian offensive, the Ukrainians are launching a massive counterattack in this area. They are deploying an increasing number of reserves to the front lines. With this reinforcement, it is expected that the Ukrainians will be able to establish a stronghold around this territory within a day or two, or perhaps a week. The upcoming days are crucial for both sides. The Russians have a limited time frame to establish a stronghold in this position if they want to maintain their momentum and continue their westward advancement. It's a crucial objective for them to solidify their position and ensure they have a secure base from which they can continue their offensive operations. Moving on to the fourth area of the Russian attack, Nevsky area. The Russians are advancing in the area of Nevsky and Novosadov. So far, the information available from military experts indicates that the Russians have gained control over a small part of the fields in this area during the week. Presently, the Russians continue their advance, but it seems that they have not achieved major results in comparison to their operations in the northern settlements. Now let's discuss the fifth and final direction of the Russian attack, which is focused on Torska. Last week, the Russians made significant progress and almost reached the outskirts of the settlement. However, there are ongoing offensive operations taking place in this area. Interestingly, the Russians have recently made a tactical shift and are now in a defensive state. This suggests that they have altered their strategy and are focusing on fortifying their positions rather than pushing further into Syrskyi. The Ukrainians made attempts to counterattack the Russians from multiple directions, including from the north, west, and south. However, so far, the Russians have successfully repelled every single attack. Additionally, the Russians continue their bombardment and shelling of Ukrainian artillery positions on the Ukrainian side of this area. The situation remains challenging for the Ukrainian troops as they continue to face staunch resistance from the Russians. Today, a video surfaced showcasing the Russians bombing Ukrainian positions in the southern region. Specifically, the targets were the artillery systems of the Ukrainian troops. According to Russian claims, the video allegedly depicts the successful destruction of another Ukrainian artillery position located in the forest. It is speculated that the targeted forces may have belonged to either the 45th, 40th, or 26th Artillery Brigades. This gives us an insight into the current state of affairs along the Kupiansk front line. In the Syrskyi region, the Ukrainian infantry army is facing numerous challenges. The Russians have amassed a large force of around 100,000 soldiers and up to 1,000 tanks in this area. With such substantial numbers, the Russians have a high probability of pushing the Ukrainians to retreat, not only towards the western part of the Zherebets River, but potentially even beyond it. We will have to wait and see whether the Russians are able to execute their plans or not. And that's it for today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more war updates. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.